coined this theory, as far as I'm aware, at least, which is the idea of standing out means filling gaps that nobody else is addressing. Can you kind of give the background on that and examples of how you use it?
But one of the principles that I kind of subcategorized underneath a broad category of like ownership and acting like an owner was this thought of the vacuum theory. And what I've seen in my career and in many other people is that in any large organization, it really probably doesn't matter in size, but in any organization, there's always more work to do than you can possibly get done, especially on a product team. And one way to stand out is to be savvy enough to realize where the gaps are, and those are the vacuums in a business, and then just latch onto one of those vacuums and solve it for people. And what I've seen is it's really rare that somebody objects to you just taking a vacuum and solving it, as long as you can do it without throwing off your day job.
Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dan Lawyer. He's the Chief Product Officer at Lucid Software, where he's been driving product innovation for over 6 years. Dan brings a deep product leadership experience from roles at companies like Vivint, Ancestry, Adobe, Family Search, a lot of the big hitters here in Utah. He's known for his philosophy that without autonomy, there's no leverage as a leader. Has helped scale Lucid to over 70 million users worldwide. He's been a guest lecturer at BYU's Marriott School of Business, has a pretty interesting theory called the vacuum theory. And he really has a lot of unique insights and really deep experience on building exceptional product organizations and products themselves. So welcome, Dan, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm thrilled to be here. Always happy to talk to a friend and former colleague, and also on one of my favorite topics, which is any
Yeah.
product. So
Yeah, it's a cool time to talk about products. I feel like with AI and everything else going on, there's so much changing thoughts. So kind of the place I wanted to start though is the thing I said in the bio where you said if I don't create autonomy, I have no leverage as a leader, as well as not have anybody else on the team at that point. Like, where did that come from, and how do you balance giving teams autonomy while still ensuring that there's alignment and not just pure, anarchy?
yeah, I think that there's a few things that lead me to that conclusion. The first is as I've grown in my career, I've realized while I'm a really good end node product manager, right? If you assign me to a Scrum team, I do really well. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
I should say I did. It's been actually a long time since I've been assigned directly to a Scrum team, but I'd like to think I could still do it well. And really, for any function of product, I have fairly high skills, but not at everything. But what I realized over time was just because maybe at one specific thing I could do it better, or I could do it well, or I had a perspective, I was limited to what I could personally do.
Mm,
And so that as I started to kind of flip my model, I realized if I could get many people, even if, and I think my first thought was, even if not everybody does it as well as I would, or the way that I thought I could, just the sheer mass of many people doing it, that's better than
right.
me. But then as I evolved and worked more and more with product teams, I actually started to realize a couple other things, which is there are some skills that there are people on my team that are way better than me at that. And so it's hey, get out of their way.
Yeah.
Let them go do it. And then I also realized how much new thought and new perspective comes when you let other people do these things. And I evolved this perspective, which is hey, I will always be a constraint if I don't create autonomy for people. And so that realization, the belief that that my team at large can create a better outcome than I can individually,
Yeah.
and just creating that scale. So then I think the other part of the question is well, how do you do that?
Mm,
What's your approach? And it can be especially for people when you first start doing it, it can be a little unnerving, right? You're
yeah.
outsourcing your baby to somebody else, and they don't do it exactly how you would have done it, and that kind of thing. But what I come back to on these principles of autonomy is I think of it this way, which is really in any business, nobody truly has 100% autonomy.
Yeah.
The CEO is, there he's accountable to the board, or she.
Right.
The board's accountable to their investors, the institutions, or everybody has some level of accountability to them. And so nobody's ever 100% autonomous. And so really what it comes down to is how do you create pockets of high autonomy where people know, hey, within this domain, within this space, I have autonomy. I can go do that. And so I think that's the key is to
Mm,
isolate what is the pocket of autonomy and really enable people to feel the ownership and feel the autonomy within a pocket.
yeah. No, I like that. It definitely is like a hard balance, but if you can get it right, it can really allow you to move fast. I'm kind of curious as like a side question. Do you think some of the AI tooling that's coming out helps people be more autonomous? Like, do you think, like in some ways on developers, what I try to tell them is think of it now like you have a team of junior engineers you can sub tasks out to, and that doesn't mean they're going to get it perfect, but it can help move you forward. And I found that's kind of a little bit of a different skill set for people to be an IC, but now with a technology that might be able to help you kind of outsource some of the like easier things to speed you up.
Yeah, I think it certainly can help you be more autonomous. So like the easiest example to point to in the domain of product is really it's like these like heavy research use cases that AI can help with. Like AI can do things really rapidly for me that I would have had to either spend a whole bunch of time as a product manager doing it myself or have, tasked out to many different teams to do.
Right.
And so getting that like rapid signal now it does come with the tax of needing to like think critically about what the AI is telling you. Uh,
Yeah.
and for example, like the classic thing that I see a lot of people do, whether it's product people or our customers do this too, they'll ask AI to do like a competitive analysis of different products, different companies. And what I've seen is like it provides accurate information, but not all on the same time horizon. So it will compare you a year ago to your competitor today, or what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
you have to go like tease it out to make sure that you're getting an accurate view. But
Yeah.
it can be a head start and it can point you toward resources and stuff like that. So I think, there are many other use cases too, but that's the easiest one to point to first, where I do think it's creating more autonomy, more self-service of people being able to get information.
Yeah, totally. It's like that skill set of being able to lead a team is now kind of important for everybody because now you kind of are leading an AI team. And I'm sure you've experienced this a lot. You often have your team of humans send you stuff that you have to review and kind of check and make sure things are working out. And for some ICs, I found, at least on engineering, they're more used to just being the one writing the code. They know every line. But now you can have AI write lines for you, and now some of your job becomes kind of more managerial of like, okay, what did it do right? What did it do wrong? And ultimately speeds you up, but is a different skill set.
Right. And it is like you see it like people that are used to like delegating that way, I think treating AI as another team member comes really naturally.
Yeah.
Other people have to kind of probably learn their way into it.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, I know over at Lucid, you all are working on really scaling visual collaboration, 70 plus million users, at least that's the number I found, over 90 patents. Like, what have you seen, having been there for many years, is like key inflection points on that journey? And how did you have to kind of adapt the product strategy and as much as you can share to kind of adapt to your growth at Lucid?
Yeah, for sure. So one, like we recently announced, so I'm not surprised you didn't get this piece. We recently announced that we passed 100 million.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
So like continue to have just great growth in that way. But it's, when I joined Lucid, we weren't that far. I think we were like 30 million or something,
Mm,
probably something less than that. And it's been interesting to see like the dynamic. When I first joined Lucid, it was largely focused on Lucid Chart as a product, which is doing well and has been the flagship product since the beginning. Then, watching the market, seeing the signals, and then choosing to introduce Lucid Spark
mm,
as a new product offering in the virtual whiteboarding space, and then really like pivoting from just like intelligent diagramming and which was really I think the first generation of Lucid's growth, and then helping to establish the visual collaboration market,
mm.
combining virtual whiteboarding, intelligent diagram together into a very seamless workflow for people.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the second phase from a product perspective, and now we're stepping into a third phase, really being pulled by our customers there, where we think about work acceleration and adding very specific workflows on top of visual collaboration. But I think there's a convergence of things, which is you always have like market dynamics and competitive forces that you have to watch. I think my latest analogy I'm quite fond of is I think about business as a sailboat, and like you have to like harness the prevailing winds. You have to tack into the wind. It's very rare and often the most inefficient path to go directly at something. You have to like make a
Mm.
lot of tacks and harness the power of the winds. Like that comes from like market conditions that maybe you can't control, or pandemics that you can't
Yeah.
control, things like that. And so you have to be really smart. And I think that the art to that is like timing those pivots to maximize your forward momentum, accurately read like where the market is going, where your customers are going, anticipate your customer needs, let them pull you places. Like all those things have been part of our journey is really thinking about that. But then it's also been really critical to keep tight alignment between our product strategy, our product roadmap, and our go-to-market functions and how they approach things. Like
Yeah.
I've experienced this not just at Lucid but other places, but from time to time, like we have a brilliant product idea, um, and it isn't well aligned with our go-to-market capability.
Yeah.
And unless you have the appetite to change the go-to-market capability, which I think is actually quite harder than building product,
Yeah.
like you're going to fail. And those are painful. Those are really painful. Doesn't matter how great your product strategy or thing is, if you can't align with your go-to-market, you're not going to succeed. And so
Right.
that's been a big part of Lucid Journey too, is right, like being very, very thoughtful about the evolution of our go-to-market capabilities and making sure that we don't build product too far ahead of that go-to-market
Mhm.
capability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love that analogy with the wind because I was just thinking like one thing that's really hard about product is the signals you get are kind of ambiguous. So like how do you decide which way the wind's blowing and when to change direction? Like when to like stay course and stay committed or when you decide like, hey, the wind's actually moving the other way, we need to change strategy.
Yeah, it's a lot of like keeping close to your customers and keeping close to the market.
Hmm.
And then we do, something that we do, like we don't do this every day. It's not a constant state for us, but once, twice a year, we do these kind of like forward-looking scenario planning type things where we're basically being like, hey, what are the potential possible futures from here that we see
Yeah.
over the next, 2 to 3 to 5 years? And what would be indications that those are playing out? And if they play out, what do we have to do to account for it? And,
Yeah.
and those types of exercises are quite helpful. And when we spread that across, the executive team and major influencer at Lucid, we actually get really interesting insights into the,
Hmm.
the likely possible futures. And then we also get guidance on what are the kind of lead indicators that that future is happening.
Yeah.
And so that sets us up for like stronger success. We've kind of thought ahead of time, like how do we act? What do we do? How do we harness the wind the most
Yeah.
if this future comes about? And then sometimes our confidence, our signals are so strong, or sometimes the beginning path is the same in many possible futures, and so you can act with conviction earlier. And so it's those types of things that have helped us to stay, I think, ahead of the game, as well as just like being super close to our customers. We spend a lot of time
Yeah.
understanding our customers and where they're going and how they're seeing the world.
Yeah, that's great. Do you think, I know kind of not a debate, but like there's always like how much do you focus on your customers and then like the competition and then like the market? Like how do you balance those different factors being in a pretty competitive space?
Yeah, my personal thing is like I stay aware of competition, but I don't chase them.
Mm,
I have very little tolerance for chasing. Like my teams will tell you, like what if I see a roadmap, which I'm like all they're doing is chasing competition. I'm like, where's the differentiation? Like
yeah,
how are we differentiating the competition? Like that's what I want to do. I don't want to chase people. I want to understand our customers really well, and I want to differentiate our offerings so that our customers get the most value. And so to me, the competitive landscape is just one of many signals that I stay aware of, but I'm not very reactionary to it.
yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I think ultimately, if anything, we're moving towards more and more user choice
Yeah,
and competition can change so fast and almost become obsolete. And so if you're aiming at where your competitor's at, you're already probably behind where things are going.
yeah, yeah.
Hitting on the vacuum theory a bit, you coined this theory, as far as I'm aware, at least, which is the idea of standing out means filling gaps that nobody else is addressing. Can you kind of give the background on that and examples of how you use it?
Yeah, I can. It actually, I think I coined that phrase. I was asked years ago to go do a lecture at BYU
Okay.
to a product management group there, aspiring product managers. And their topic was that I was assigned was how to be a rock star in your first product gig.
Okay.
And it was actually really interesting because I put together a lot of my thoughts, but I also interviewed a bunch of other product leaders. And as we pulled together all that signal and I prepared for this, I realized that everything that differentiated people, they were all the soft skills. None of the like nobody's like, oh, you got to be really good at writing user stories in your first product. It's and it's because anybody with like average or above intellect, you can teach the hard skills of product management. The soft skills is much
Mm,
harder to teach people. But one of the principles that I kind of subcategorized underneath a broad category of like ownership and acting like an owner was this thought of the vacuum theory. And what I'd seen in my career and many other people is that in any large organization, it really probably doesn't matter in size, like, but in any organization, there's always more work to do than you can possibly get done, especially
Right.
on a product team. And one way to stand out is to be savvy enough to realize where the gaps are, and those are the vacuums in a business, and then just latch onto one of those vacuums and solve it for people. And what I've seen is it's really rare that somebody objects to you just taking a vacuum and solving it, as long as you can do it without throwing off your day job, right? As long as you can
Yeah.
still get your main job done, if you also can go create value and solve some other problem for the business, people do that. And it's also a place where people are fairly tolerant of you crossing swim lanes too. As long as you
Yeah.
do it as long as you do it above board and signal to people, hey, I'm going to lean in here and help you. Are you okay? You can guide me, that kind of thing. But and then I'll give you like some examples of
Yeah.
this. Some of these are like, maybe I'll get from like simple to like more sophisticated examples. So simple examples are like the person who realizes that the whole team, is going to show up in person for a meeting on an early morning and thinks to bring bagels, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody, like especially if like nobody asked them, they were just aware. They realized, hey, there's a gap. There's going to be people showing up hungry. We should bring bagels and coffee or whatever and feed
Yeah.
them. I think that's like a simple example. Another example I saw at Lucid, we were in a meeting and we were talking about something. Somehow, like somebody in the meeting, we got on this gripe thread in the meeting about how there are so many different tool palettes and stuff on our canvas that like it was getting in the way of the content. And we wish there's just a really simple way to like get all that out of the way. During the meeting, an engineer writes the code and creates a little button that you just click this little button and all the Chrome goes out of the way. It's not quite full screen mode, but like all the Chrome goes out of the way. It's just you and the canvas. Um,
Hmm.
and it was like a super delightful feature. And by that afternoon, it had been like checked in and was in production on the product.
Yeah.
And it was just
Awesome.
like you can't always do that, but and then like maybe one other example, like super early in my career, like I this will certainly separate the generations of people listening to this conversation. But my first job in technology was for a company called WordPerfect.
Yeah.
If you know who WordPerfect is, then probably says something demographically about you. But WordPerfect used to be the incumbent word processor. It used to be more popular and better than Microsoft Word. Then they got their clock cleaned by Microsoft.
Yeah.
But I worked there back in their day, and I was in localization and translation of the products and stuff like that. This was like pre-broad adoption of the internet. This is like how old this was, you guys. And in the process of translating the documentation or the interface for software, their workflow literally was like they would send physical copies of the documentation back and forth to translators located in countries. So we're sending like these big packets of printed documentation to people. I was on like the Finnish translation team. So we're sending it to people in Finland. They're marking it up. They're doing stuff manually. They're changing stuff, and then they're sending it physically back to us. Then they
Yeah.
start like sometimes it fax stuff, but like faxing like 300 pages is like not awesome
Yeah.
back in those days. And one day I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is just like a really dumb workflow. There's like a whole bunch of latency in it. There's it's expensive relative to like if we could figure out how to do this electronically. And so I figured out a whole system and wrote a whole series like of macros and interfaces inside of WordPerfect where you could just go into WordPerfect. They could look at everything on screen. It had a really good WYSIWYG view of the document. And so they could go in there and they could actually like mark everything up, do everything that they wanted to do inside of the product and were perfect. And then they had the option to either like email that. Email was starting to become a thing,
Yeah.
the same type of email that we have now, but like email, or they could put it on a shared drive that could be accessed. And so
Mhm.
went from like this cost and latency of like physically shipping stuff
Yeah.
to like a whole like markup capability in the product where it was like really real time. Uh,
Wow.
how people could do that and I don't remember I had calculated the cost savings. There was like a meaningful cost savings or whatever, but like I just did that because I was like, this is so dumb.
Yeah.
Nobody asked me to do it. Our translators like started to really like that. So that was like one of my early examples of like me personally, like just seeing a vacuum and figuring out a more efficient way to do something that I think people were really happy to do it that way.
Yeah, it's a great example, and I think pretty relevant for people right now where you can find vacuums when technology changes more easily, I think.
Mhm.
Like I benefited from this in my career. I got into data science kind of earlier, so there's like just a lot of vacuums in that space for companies. And I think right now it's not just AI, but that's one of them where like if you know some of these things just better than other people, and it sounds like you probably knew the internet and software better than most at that time, you were able to create probably what felt like a crazy amount of value on your own to people that didn't know that technology.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. Like there are more vacuums get created when these big technical shifts happen,
Yeah.
and you're helping people to pull forward and adapt. And there's a lot of that around AI. Like I've got people on my team today. They're like very sophisticated in their ability to use like on our UX team. They can use AI to create functional prototypes,
Yeah.
stuff that would have taken much longer in the past. But not everybody on the team knows how to do that. And so now they're like in the process of like kind of creating positive patterns and showing people how to do it, adopting it. So I see a lot of that kind of vacuums to be filled around AI right now.
Yeah, definitely. So lots of opportunity and change. Um, cool. Cross-industry product DNA. So having led, multiple products really across a lot of different industries, Family Search, Adobe, Ancestry, Vivint, Lucid, like what have you found to be the principles that have really transcended industries, go to market? Like these all kind of like Ancestry's very B2C, Lucid's more B2B. Like what are the principles that really transcend anything?
Yeah, I mean and this won't be shocking, right? It's what people tell you all the time is it's all about like there's a simple thing which is like understand the problems.
Yeah.
That you're trying to solve, understand the value that you're trying to create. This is something probably though that I maybe lean more on or do different than many people. A lot of people in their workflow, they think about, okay, understand the problems, and then they go, okay, now what are the possible solutions to
Yeah.
those problems? And I am have discovered a different workflow than that I prefer and that I think is helpful. I also think it's cognitively harder. But what I tend to do is to be like, okay, focus on the problem set. Like, first of all, it's like, who's the customer? Can I understand them? Like, things like personas or things like that. What are their pains and gaps? What's their problem set? And then instead of jumping straight to what are possible solutions for those things, I jump to what would be the resulting value if that pain went away,
Mm,
without describing the solution. It's just like, hey, like if that pain's gone, how is their life different? And
yeah.
I use that as a litmus test for any possible solution.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, if the possible solution doesn't deliver that value, it's not the right solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does a couple things. One, it like keeps you very focused on value creation. The other is it actually constrains the set of possible solutions
Yeah.
because you're only considering solutions that get you closest to the value creation. And it's like, but it's that kind of change, like who's the customer, pains and gaps, value creation and possible solutions. Like that's common across all those things.
Yeah.
There's actually a fairly big difference between B2C and B2B.
Hmm.
And not in that context, but just in like how you function, how you do your job. It really comes down to the scale of the audience that you're dealing with.
Right.
And so, for example, like, and this is what I love about Lucid is I get to play in both worlds. We have a very healthy B2C motion and a very healthy B2B motion at Lucid. And there's things I love about both of those. And so, like, I get to play with the best parts of everything. But on the B2C side, it's funny because, like, when you have 100 million users, and a lot of them came into that B2C motion and now are progressing into like our B2B motion. But like that long tail of people that self-served into our product, pretty sure none of them want to sit down with me and talk to me about
Yeah.
uh, what we're doing at our vision. Also, as much as I love them, I'm interested in their aggregate signal and the ability for one or two of them to like change the whole roadmap.
Yeah.
Is pretty low there, right? Just because like they're not likely to be representative of the broad base. You have to take way
Right.
quantitative views and way different strategies for how to get signal. On the B2B side, if you have, 1,000 or a few hundred or however many customers you have, and they're spending millions of dollars with you, their interest in talking to you is quite high.
Yeah.
Also, my interest in making sure that the needs of an individual customer are met is quite high when they're spending millions of dollars with us, and just the engagement, the way that you learn, but also if we do a test against hundreds of accounts versus millions of accounts, the way you get signal is quite different, right? And you know this from your data science background, stuff like that, right? Like the quantitative approach against millions is way different than the quantitative approach against hundreds.
Yeah.
And also your time to signal is really different. Like I can spin up an A/B test against the B2C motion and get signal in 24 or 48 hours on
Yeah.
questions. There are some types of tests we do on the B2B side where it takes me months to get a signal. And I hate those because I like to learn fast. So, but those are some of the nuances, but there is a repeatable practice, I think, in all product management. It comes down to who's your customer, what's their pain, what's the value you're creating, what are the possible solutions to do that.
Yeah, I love that kind of intermediate step of like, what's the world look like if this pain goes away? I makes me think of a Jeff Bezos quote where he said something along the lines of like, we always knew if we could do 2 day shipping that people would want that and that they would pay for it. Like the question wasn't whether it was something people wanted, but could you do it?
Right.
And I think that thinking often pushes you to long-term solutions, which maybe I don't know if you've seen this, but like, is it hard to get long-term buy-in from companies like, Amazon's 2 day shipping was not a small bet. Like there was a road where they ended up maybe in some other multiverse that they couldn't do it. Ultimately worked out for them, but they had to have conviction, I'm sure, through a lot of challenges to ultimately crack that nut.
Yeah, and that the ability to get the buy-in is all relative to the cost of building it in some ways, right? Like some of those long-term views do take big bets and big investment to get
Yeah.
there. And that leads to like another part. This is like a deep part of how I think about the world. I'm a huge advocate like of de-risking concepts
Yeah.
and rapid de-risking. I've spent a lot of time studying and coming up with methodologies or learning methodologies and teaching them to teams of like how do you rapidly de-risk things? And
Yeah.
it's because like spending money up front in a rapid way to de-risk something is way cheaper in the long run than building for 6 months or a year only to
Yeah.
discover that you're wrong. And so it's well worth it. And there are like really great approaches to most questions of how you could de-risk something to have higher confidence that what you're doing
Yeah.
is pan out and learning. And really to me, de-risking is just it's just type of learning. It's part of this broader mantra that I have about maximizing your speed of learning.
Yeah.
And for and a product team, like one of the biggest threads of learning is around de-risking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Definitely not easy, at least from my experience, to always do well, but
Right?
it definitely works well when it works. Um, Lucid Spark, you hit on a little bit, is a newer product that you guys have come out with. And I think that I found an article saying you all conceived, built, and released it in less than 6 months during COVID.
Yeah.
True?
Yeah. So from the first line of code committed until the official launch was 4 months.
And this is pre-AI, so this is all human.
Yeah, this is now there are some things that helped us to go
Yeah,
fast. One, like Lucid's engineering teams are hands down the fastest I've ever seen in my career. Like they move really fast and really autonomously, which
yeah,
is great. The second thing though is like we it's not like we woke up one morning and said let's go build Lucid Spark. Like
yeah,
we had been thinking about it for a long time, and then we finally kind of got to a point of conviction early in the pandemic and acted as fast as we could. So like having done a lot of forethought helped speed it up.
mm,
But other things that sped it up though were like when we committed, like we kind of just pulled out all the stops and
mm,
said we're going to put strong people on there. We're going to give them high autonomy and we're going to get out of their way and let them run. And that was my role in that. Really was like, the people we put in charge. My conversations with there, which is like, where do you have friction? Where are you blocked? My job is to get you unblocked.
yeah,
I wasn't in the meat of all their decisions. I wasn't in all that stuff. Like they had high autonomy to do it was right, and I was just like the main friction remover and the main uh, block remover. Like that was my role, was to empower them to go fast. And so I think like that was super helpful. But it also helped that it was built on an existing platform. And so like 95% of the code already
mm,
existed in our platform. So
yeah.
the combination of those things allowed us to go really, really fast.
Did you end up finding that that led to excessive tech debt long term, or was it like you had such a good platform to build on that it really was like quality and speed?
Yeah, I think there was some amount of tech debt, but not huge because like there was a very proven platform underneath it, so it wasn't there. Like there were some places like we weren't used to like this multi-product world, licensing world, and sort of some things in there we picked up a little bit of tech debt, but it wasn't too bad. It's hard to do any project fast and not have some tech debt, but so there was some, but it wasn't what you might think. I think the biggest thing for us was like we entered the market late. Like there are other big incumbents already doing virtual whiteboarding and benefiting strongly from that during the pandemic, which is why we had to move fast. And so we were in a position that I don't love being in, which I already told you how much I hate chasing competitors, right?
Yeah.
And so literally like our first, when we released the product, we got to relative parity in that first release. Like it was pretty competitive, but there were still some gaps. There were still places where it wasn't as good. Maybe some competing offerings in specific use cases. And I remember talking with our leader that was over it and looking at the roadmaps, and I was like, "Look, you've got one more quarter to talk to me about parity. And after that, your roadmap needs to be 80% differentiation. No more talking about parity. And they took that seriously. And so we got to, parity really fast. And then our roadmap was like 80% differentiation. And it has been ever since. Like the huge majority of our investment today in our products, whether it's Lucid Spark or anything else we're doing, is all differentiation. Like we don't like we're in a great position where we're able to like really invest in the differentiation of our products versus trying to chase a competitor.
Yeah, it gets hard when something really does become table stakes for a
Yeah.
product because you kind of have, if it literally is table stakes, you need it. But it won't ultimately set you apart, but it's like the first step.
Right.
Just frustrating. But yeah, some of these things change so fast, and I think it's going to keep changing quickly. What people anticipate as table stakes experiences in their products is just going to get higher. And if you can get ahead of that curve, you won't have to be catching up for, spending a lot of money and time to essentially just be on the same level field.
Yep.
Cool, cool. One thing I know that you like from looking at some of your writing online is Stan Pink's Drive, and
Yeah.
it talks about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. How do you think about that with your team? Like, do you try to diagnose each team member's motivation, or like, how do you apply that like as a product leader?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that one like I really I find what Dan Pink says in that book, I find it to seem very
Yeah,
practical and real based on my experience with people that they are, tend to be motivated intrinsically by the pursuit of mastery, autonomy, and purpose.
yeah,
And so I think it's a really healthy framework. When I think about people, there's a couple things that I will do with most people that I work directly with or work closely with, or I even will do this in an interview process with people often, but I often will try to like suss out like kind of how they're wired motivationally in that way
mhm,
because and I'll give you a great example of how this backfires. So I had a boss, a guy, I don't know if he'll watch this, but I love him. He's a good friend. And I don't think he'll be offended by this. But my boss, when I worked at Adobe,
mhm,
the nature of my role there, like every quarter, I had a set of stuff I had to do to basically like diagnose that part of the business, prepare materials for the executive team, and just like do the readout of like plan versus actual of the quarter. And it was like a really, compact 2 weeks of just deep dive on everything. It
yeah,
was great because I learned a ton, but also it was hard. I'm doing all-nighters. I'm like, no, so every time I would do that, like my boss would come to me afterwards and he would say, Dan, thank you for doing that. I know you spent, the nights or the weekend or whatever getting that done. Take your family out to a nice meal on me.
mhm, yeah,
Um, and what he was trying to say is, thank you. I appreciate and recognize what you did. Not understanding my motivations, anytime he would say that, I would be like, you think I'm that cheap? You think I gave up time? Like, I never said this to him, but like, this is how I'm reacting to he's trying to like encourage me and thank me. And I'm responding really negatively to it because I'm
yeah,
like, that is not how I'm wired. That is not why I did that. And like, I would never trade off time for my family for a dinner, right? Like,
yeah,
but I was smart enough to realize that was his love language. It was him just trying to express it to me.
yeah,
But he had a more accurate understanding of my intent there. He would know that like what I was doing was a lot around mastery. What I was doing was a lot around purpose and like unlocking and tapping into those things and expressing it to me in that way would have been way more motivating. But when I engage with people, like I will often ask people in an interview, like with a final candidate, I get a lot of final candidates. I'll often ask them two related questions. One's kind of the inverse of the other. I'll say, I hope this happens often. You come home from the office and you say to yourself, I have the best job ever.
yeah,
What is most likely to create that for you? And,
mm,
and they'll tell me stories, they'll tell me things, they'll be like, this is the thing that really gets me jazzed. And sometimes it's a team, sometimes it's they learn something really hard, sometimes they solve some really hard problems, sometimes it's they solve pain for a customer and that's tapping into their purpose, those types of things. And then I'll ask them the inverse. I'll be like, okay, I hope this rarely happens, but sometimes you go home, you're like, man, I got to get another job. I'm
yeah,
not working. I'm like, what creates that feeling for you? And like understanding that dynamic about people is the beginning of starting to understand that framework. And then I talk to them, and I encourage like in one-on-ones and in mentoring sessions to be very open about like how you wired. Do you want to pursue mastery? You want to pursue autonomy, purpose? How you feel about like just asking very specifically about those things,
yeah,
and then creating really specific plans. And if somebody needs if they want to pursue mastery, then unlock it, provide training for them, give them a mentor, send them to a conference, like whatever they need to do. And that can be very fulfilling if they're anchored that way. The hardest thing for most companies to provide is the sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Like most companies aren't completely altruistic. At least they are to some degree, but they're still for-profit businesses for the most part, and
Yeah.
sometimes that can be challenging. But it can be there. Like you can link the stories to value creation in the world, and that can be really motivating for people too. The more people understand and empathize with the customer, I think on the purpose side, the more that helps them.
Yeah, I think for Ancestry, that was one of their big competitive advantages
Yeah.
was, they're still for profit, but you could very easily every day stumble on a story on how what you were doing impacted someone's family,
Yep.
which is pretty rare
Yeah.
in the tech
Yep.
world. So that was always really special. The other thing that you hit on, I really agree with, which is like for me, autonomy is a big one. Like I've read the book and that really resonated with me. And I've always been a big proponent, like every company I've worked at offers bonuses, including the one I'm at, and like more money is great. But when you talk to people, it's actually very not motivating on a day-to-day basis, I found, because one, you kind of feel like disconnected from it, unless maybe you're directly in sales, which is a little different with commissions. You don't really know how much you can impact it. And so while you're happy to get a bonus, and you're happy that the company provides that, it's not actually changing your motivation too much day to day. Where these other things, I think he does a really good job calling out, they actually do motivate you. Like if you're giving people the ability to level up their skills or lead a team and have that autonomy or really feel like purpose that they believe in, which I think is one of the real powers of empowerment, is you're essentially packaging up a lot of that, which is like, hey, I'm letting you kind of pick a little bit of your purpose in this box, be empowered to execute on it and grow during it. If nothing else, I think empowerment really gets those things wrapped up really well for people when done right. And it's just kind of counterintuitive because you'd think, oh, just like throw money at people or give them free dinners or like do all these things. And a lot of research just suggests that's not really that motivating long term.
Yeah. I mean, the foundation is like you got to compensate people well enough that it kind of takes that off the table.
Right.
And then it usually comes down to these other factors. And autonomy is the most interesting one because some people think, oh, you just give people complete, unbridled autonomy. And it goes back to a little bit of this concept of pockets of autonomy, but there's another framework related to that I really think is important around autonomy. There's a thing called the conscious competency model. Uh,
Mm,
and we probably don't have time to go all the way deep in it, but it's the basic model is that like people acquire skill kind of on a skill by skill basis, and there's a progression from being unconsciously incompetent to being consciously incompetent to being consciously competent to being unconsciously competent. And autonomy is not helpful when you're unconsciously incompetent. Autonomy is not helpful when you're consciously incompetent.
right.
Autonomy starts to become helpful when I'm consciously competent and is mandatory when I'm unconsciously competent. And like like if anyone wants to, there's a ton of depth around that model, but I think it's huge to understand the concept of how you create these pockets of autonomy, the rate at which you do it, the rate at which you expand it for people. And it's not a person by person thing; it's a skill by skill thing.
Yeah.
No person is 100% competent in everything. And so like I think that relationship relative to autonomy in particular is really important. It's really important to have it be an open conversation and a
Yeah.
safe conversation with people.
Yeah. I love that you bring that up. I feel like that was one of the longer learnings for me as a middle manager was like, at least for me, I kind of believe people were competent in similar ways to me. And so you're not leading in a situational way. And you kind of put people in bad situations sometimes because you assume they've got some competence that maybe they don't have, or vice versa. And then when you move up and you're like reporting to a CEO or like a board, then you realize they just assume you're getting the autonomy, but there's also, downsides where if things aren't working, it's kind of on you. And so it doesn't matter if you're competent, you just got to figure it out and become competent very quickly.
Yeah, and it's super critical that between the manager and the person on their team, that it's a very safe, open conversation. That either one of them, like I need to be able to go to my boss at any time and be like, hey, I understood every word you say, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Like I don't think I have that skill set. Let's talk about how I get it.
Yeah.
That should be a safe, easy conversation. And then the other way around, which is, as the boss or the manager, you need to be able to go to the person and be like, hey, I think I see signs maybe you're struggling here with
Yeah.
this. Can we get your mentor? Can I help you get skill? And it's not like the commitment with each other is like, how do we, like, we start with the assumption that nobody has all skill.
Right.
And then we start with the acknowledgement that our job together is to help you develop skill where needed as fast as possible, uh,
Yeah.
and just making that safe.
Yeah, and back to like the mastery motivator. Most people, almost 100% of people when I've had these conversations is like the leader, they're
Mhm.
super psyched. Like, "Oh, you're willing to invest in me or
Right?
help me grow these skills." It's actually not a hard conversation when you think it might be.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't hit a bit on AI powered products. I know you all have done some stuff, AI powered sort, AI prompt flow. Like, how do you and how do you think product leaders should think about AI? It's such a big topic on everyone's mind and like not just
Yeah.
like building with it, but like putting it into a product.
Right. Yeah, it's so fascinating to like see what's happening around AI today, and it's I have a love-hate thing with it probably some days. Like it certainly complicates my life having to think about it.
Yeah.
But also the upside potential is huge, and so like it's super exciting and thrilling that way as well. I think that the thing that is really that I see a lot of and that is hard to get away from, but I think is a bit of a booby trap for people.
Yeah.
AI is a technology.
Hmm.
AI is not, it's not a solution. It's not value. It's
Yeah.
like, like we should think of it like we think about networks, right? They're valuable things in technology. They're smarter than networks, but they're
Right.
usually valuable. But when we get, trapped around for AI's sake, so there's a lot of people today that they just want to label everything as an agent. Uh,
Yeah.
or they want to, they want to build an MCP server. Okay, cool. Well, why do you want to build it?
Right.
I don't disagree that it's cool. Also, what's the value you're trying to create? And so I think there's like in all this AI stuff before everybody just runs to like implementing and building technology, you have to back up to the fundamentals, which is like who are the customers, what's their pain, what's the value that's created if that pain goes away, and then you can back into like, is there an opportunity for AI to be part of that value creation?
Yeah.
And it's got to be really, I think, linked in there, or you're at risk of, making some mistakes, overinvesting, doing some weird things. And so keeping that fundamental framework in place, I think, is critical. Then I think I also have seen like a lot of like rapid one-off AI just to be in the game or say stuff. And I don't fault people too much for that. Like it is important to give your customers confidence that you're investing, that you're going places. It's important to show points on the board and make progress.
Yeah.
Also, you can rapidly like kind of fragment your product, create weird one-off experiences. If you just have like random acts of AI firing different places in the product, it's not cohesive to the customer. They don't understand it. And so you've got to think through what are the journeys?
Yeah.
What's like the overall workflow? What's the journey? How does this all play together over time? And then get it out there in a way that makes sense. And so I think, which again, like these are like, very fundamental parts of I think how you think about product anyways. It's just hard because there's so much excitement and interest. And you have this interesting dynamic where, the hype of AI is up here, the capability of AI up here, the adoption of AI is here, right? So you've got like this double gap in there that makes it hard to, tease out from a product perspective the best places to go and the best places to invest.
Yeah, I think especially for people at tech companies, it can feel like everyone is already like 100% in on AI, but then if you just go talk to like actual users, to your point, most people aren't.
Mhm.
You're still fairly on that early adoptive adoption curve at a lot of places if you're really using it day to day. And I think too, there's this big risk, these one-off products you mentioned, where one of the things that shifted our mindset when we're building products is these short-term bets are kind of scarier because it's not hard to perceive someone just spinning one up, whether it's a competitor or just a one-off. For us, we do YouTube tools, and there's a lot of competitors out there that will just spin off like one of our tools or maybe some fraction of one of our tools. And it probably didn't cost them much, where before it might have had this bigger barrier to entry because they just kind of don't care about the scalability, the journey. And for some people, that does start to kind of like take little hits at your market share because they're just pulling little pieces out. So really differentiation and user experience in the whole journey becomes even more valuable because if you don't have those things, someone else can pretty easily spin up what feels like a prototype. Like if your product's just like a prototype with AI, it might be quite easy for someone to kind of compete.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's hard to create that sustainable differentiation.
Yeah.
So it's very much like you got to move fast, you got to learn fast, you got to follow the fundamentals on value creation.
Yeah. Principles don't change to your point. Um, I know you all recently, at least recently from what I can tell, launched some new APIs with partners like ServiceNow, Slack, Notion. What's kind of your framework for building developer ecosystem, which is pretty different than building like a consumer product or a B2B product that people are consuming in a SaaS way, but actual managing the backend layer in an API system.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a broad range of plays we could make with this developer platform that we've created.
Yeah.
And I think the places where we're seeing the most success currently is one, like by nature of having like a hardened, proven developer platform, is actually sped up our own first party integrations, right?
Yeah.
Like our ability to like build other integrations is way better now because we've got this robust platform. So our own velocity and ability to do stuff has gone way up just ourselves. Like I don't even remember, like we had a year where we built like 40 first party integrations. We've gone way up in our ability to do stuff. So that's the first thing where we saw the first benefit is just ourselves. Like we can go faster because we've got a more hardened developer platform. The
Yeah.
second thing that we saw, there's like two other potential audiences. Well, there's a third, but there's like I think it was like the somebody on an IT team at one of our customers that wants to do something custom with our product or wants to get their own like homegrown system integrated in or build some workflow or something like that. We've enabled them, and we're starting to see some really interesting use cases of what people are doing that way. In fact, there was the CEO of Carta just yesterday published a video on LinkedIn of something they did. And what's interesting is like I didn't know they'd done it.
Yeah.
Until I saw the video, and I'm like that's really cool. And we see really interesting use cases from our customers that we had never anticipated or in that same way. And so unlocking them to like get the value that they need and integrate it into their ecosystem has been really compelling. And we see a lot of that. Then the third thing is like your classic third party integrations. So like a company like ServiceNow was able to go build their own integration with Lucid,
Yeah.
something like that. Or RDoc just recently launched into integration with Lucid. Their ability to go do that without having high dependency on Lucid because we've got all the right APIs in place, and we've done it in a way that lets them do like really cool stuff. The RDoc one in particular is a really cool combination of using our developer platform plus some intelligent APIs to
Mm.
automate a ton of work for enterprise architects. Like it's very cool. So like
Yeah.
that audience, and then there's a fourth audience that I don't think we've done a great job of tapping into yet. And but I think it was like this broad long tail of a marketplace. So when we look at our API platform, like I've taught like when we talked to like a lot of other players that have built their own APIs and their own developer platform. And we talked to some of them and be like, oh yeah, we've got over 1 million people that have built on top of our developer, or a million different integrations, 1 million different builds on top of our platform.
Yeah.
And I remember the time I was having that conversation. I'm like, we're working on number 10. I'm like the scale is quite different in that way, and we're well past 10. But like
Yeah.
I just was in my mind, I'm just like, this is crazy. He's talking millions. I'm thinking, how do we get to 10? But we've moved past that. But like I still think that's a big untapped thing for us. It's like the developer in their garage that has some cool idea, and we haven't succeeded at that piece yet, which is like how do you create like a rich marketplace where that person in their garage that wants to build something and more that's going to come through AI now. Like how can give them an ecosystem where they can monetize that? I
Right.
think that maybe is the hardest part is that piece. I think the other just like the third party, the IT shop that internal that wants to build something in our own internal builders, those are much easier I think to connect with and get going.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense on the internal velocity. And I think it's a great bet because ultimately AI, if anything, is going to make like we're going to have to start building products for AI. Like
Yep.
that seems clear to me. And some products will win just because they're easier for people to hook up to their ChatGPT or their Claude
Yep.
and start prototyping and getting these flows. And that's where I think MCPs are kind of filling a space for now. I think it'll probably evolve past that, but it's going to be crazy. Like the front end, you might not be the front end for a lot of your users at some point.
Right. Yeah, like there is a real risk of being disintermediated by some other AI or something that like it just views you as a skill available to it, right? And
Yeah.
and does stuff. And so like anticipating that world is also kind of interesting.
Yeah. Super cool. Well, I know we got a few minutes left, and I tried to, if we have time, hit like five kind of flash questions, which are a little bit more fun. So hopefully you forgive me, but we can go through them pretty quick. I noticed I think you said this on LinkedIn, you tagged features as exec meddling when you were a PM. And I'm curious now that you're the exec, like what things do you think your team might be tagging for
Yeah,
you?
I'm sure they tag stuff. I was really intentional when I said that on LinkedIn because I want to be honest with people. Like I get it, right? Like I've
Yeah.
been there and I feel that pain. Also, like now at the other end of the spectrum, I have more compassion and understanding around that pain, which is, and it really, it actually, this is actually why I've been enamored by this sailboat analogy. And I recently actually made a video that I share with my team explaining how sailboats are like companies and how these pivots are, just tacking to the wind. And a lot of the executive meddling, not all of it, but a lot of it is just that the executive team trying to tack to maximize the momentum created by the wind or the
Yeah.
market forces. Oftentimes in that metaphor, like really your roadmap is the sail. It's the thing that you have to move to harness the wind.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. And so like I think helping people connect with when executive meddling is in its best intent, that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
harnessing the power of the market, the power of the wind. Sometimes you do get people that do dumb things. Sometimes you get people
Yeah.
that make bad decisions and push it onto a team. I think that's rare. I think that's the exception. And it's rarely done malevolently. It's always with good intent.
Right.
But keeping the door open for those conversations, I think, is really critical. And so part of it too is like I'm like my team is going to read what I write here. I
Right.
want them to also know that I acknowledge this happens, it's important to me that they feel comfortable surfacing that to me. If they're ever like, Dan, you know that thing you said about executive meddling? Well, guess what? It's like that's you.
Yeah.
I want that to be an open, easy conversation. So so one, like they can back me off if I'm wrong, or two,
Yeah.
I can share the strategic context if it's an important tack,
Yeah, I like that. One thing I tell my team is like, I've got weak opinions weakly held.
right?
Part of my job is to bring those opinions to the group, but you need to realize that it's not a mandate. We still need to hold ideas to the best ideas win. But clearly, your job is a very experienced and seen lots of things. You've been on many seas in the sailboat analysis. You should be bringing these reads to the team, but that doesn't mean you don't want to get in this place where it's like the highest paid person always wins.
I'm not naive enough to think I've got everything right. Like
Yeah.
it's extremely rare that I am directive.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to be directive. So.
Cool. Awesome. All right, next one. Would you rather build a product with unlimited budget but zero user feedback or unlimited user feedback and $50 in a laptop?
And neither one of those sound delightful. But I would probably rather do so the first one was like was unlimited budget but no user feedback.
Yep.
Um, and then the second one is limited budget with a lot of
Unlimited
user
user
feedback.
feedback. Yeah, you can basically have as many users as you want to talk to.
Yeah, I would do the latter every day. Because I believe in my ability to learn fast and the team's ability to learn fast if you've got connection with users.
Yeah.
And so like I would sign up for that. Like we can also like being unconstrained is not healthy. You're wasteful. You're not forced to make hardened decisions. You like the constraints you get when you're constrained are actually super positive
Hmm.
and the decision making that has to happen.
Yeah, love that. What's the craziest lucid diagram you've ever seen or made that actually was useful? Like, I'm just curious, like, what are some of the diagrams you've all made that have just been like on another level?
I mean, my teams and people at Lucid do some next level stuff. I don't think anybody in the world gets as much value out of Lucid as Lucid does.
Yeah.
Although some of our customers um, give us a run for our money for sure. But we do a lot inside Lucid. Some of them are just like fun, playful things. Some of them are like deeply insightful. What we do, like I think, one that gets used a lot, like probably one of our most used internal documents is uh, our our diagram that shows the layout of all of our Scrum teams. And
Okay.
we use Lucid to to plan out any changes to Scrum teams, to show their assignments, where everybody fits and lives, and then to like share that out with the team. Um, And that's been like, great for creating transparency and awareness. It also has been a great kind of management planning tool for how we go through that. So that's one. It's not like super complex, but
Yeah.
it's like highly pragmatic and highly useful for us. I've seen other like really interesting things. I've seen customers that have like done really interesting like logical flows in diagrams of Lucid Chart, and then used our APIs to export those and have automated the creation of embedded software from a diagram. So like
Wow.
they're like they draw out the logic in Lucid Chart, and then they push a button and it's software burned onto a chip. And I'm like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty
Stuff
cool.
like that. There was a customer during the pandemic in the logistics space that was involved in distributing vaccines around the world, where
Yeah.
they designed all of those logistical flows in our product.
Wow.
That was tapping into a sense of purpose. Like I think a lot of us felt good that we were, in some way part of helping with
Yeah.
that. So those are the types of things that are interesting to me. And then there's a lot of like fun, playful stuff. Like I see, like people have created like a lot of board games inside of Lucid
Oh, wow, that's
and
cool.
using our features that way and stuff like that. That is just fun and playful. So it's pretty broad.
That's super cool. Maybe last question. In a different world where you're not a product manager or product leader, what are you doing? Like, what's your second calling?
Yeah, it changes not rapidly, but it evolves over time. Right now, my focus, I can prove it actually I have sitting right here behind me.
Oh, nice.
So my current focus that I have practiced every day for the last 2 years is photography. I love photography, and I'm very intentional. Like I study every day. I practice every day. I focus on like wildlife, nature, landscapes, and street photography.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome.
and I do a lot, but I like it. It's like super therapeutic to me mentally,
Yeah.
and I love the learning. I love the creativity of it. I love all those types of things. And in my mind, I'm like, if one of these days I will be done, and then I'd like to travel the world taking pictures. Like that would be fun, and I'd like to structure it like a business so that I can write it off on my taxes.
Yeah,
We'll,
yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Can people find your pictures anywhere? Like, do you host them on a site?
Yeah, I mean, I do like so the most constant streams like on Instagram. I have Wander Like a Human is
Okay.
my account dedicated to like wildlife, nature, landscapes, and then Streets Like a Human is my account dedicated to street photography.
Okay.
That's a recent, like I've just started doing it kind of like in the last month or two. And so but anybody that wants to sign on, like I'm in the mode of like getting followers. So like I would thank you.
Sweet.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll drop some in the comments, or not the comments, but the description. We'll drop some links. And I know you're also on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You post stuff under Dan Lawyer. Anywhere else people should reach out?
No, that was probably the best place, LinkedIn. And then if they're interested in my photography, like I don't know why it would be, but if you are, like it's there.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn, I do like I have a lot. I have like a whole list of topics I aspire to like write about, and as I get time, I do on LinkedIn. Also, if anybody just wants to ask me a question, I'd be happy to respond and write about any of this stuff. I feel also equally passionate about just like sharing insights about how to do product. So,
Yeah.
love to talk about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's something I tell sometimes people are amazed at, like, someone like you working at one of the top companies in Utah, a really storied career. Like there's no way this person is gonna respond, but you'd be pretty surprised at like how willing, at least in my experience, people are to share some advice and some parting words. So cool. Well, thanks so much, Dan. I'm sure you're super busy. Thank you for taking the time. Excited to see what you do with both Lucid and your photography, and I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Great. Thanks, Tyler. We'll see you.